I'm an orphan. My brother's queer. The city of Chicago got the clap from my sister. Mom drinks. Dad coughs blood. I have ringworm, immersion foot, the incurable crud, and the draft ruined my chances of being a brain surgeon. People, you have no problem. Except me.
Moments with Pugs, brought to you by Get Your Ass to Work, something that everyone can enjoy. Now on to the show. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the podcast. This is the Get Your Ass to Work podcast, episode number 15. This podcast, we discuss being an entrepreneur, businessman, finance, self-improvement, how to not be a little bitch, move your life forward, all that good crap that everybody always never really wants to hear, but gets them motivated to be something a little bit better than what they were doing yesterday. That's the goal. So this afternoon, we are going to talk about when shit hits the fan and the market starts to turn, things start to get ugly, business is down, interest rates are up. What are we going to do? The sky's falling. There is a huge turn in our markets right now. I'm seeing it in the stock market, although I'll tell you right now I'm not an expert. I don't understand what's happening in the stock market. I do understand what's happening in the real estate market. I can tell you right now with my conversations I've had with several brokers across the country that the real estate market is turning, and it is turning to the downside where home prices are falling, less buyers are buying, and homes are staying on the market for a longer amount of time. Guys, it's been a great ride. We had an amazing upswing, but now things are starting to turn around. And I can't say that it's bad. All I can say is that things will get harder for some of those who are unwilling to adapt, and it's going to be tough for everyone for at least a short period of time until they get their feet back under them and adapt to the changes that are happening in a new market. You may have to work twice as many hours to get the same results, spend more time away from your family, spend more money on marketing and advertising just to get a smaller return than what you were getting only 6 months prior. Are you guys ready for that? Can you handle a reduction in pay? Can you handle working more hours, spending more time in the office and away from the things that you like to do just to make ends meet? Absolutely nothing is going to be easy. When you were born and your mom flushed you out, she didn't hand you an instruction manual that said, the easy way. People are always looking for those shortcuts, those tips, those tricks that are going to help them get rich quick and make them $1 billion before the age of 30. Well, they do exist for 0.000000001% of the population. I don't even know how many fucking zeros that was, but let's just say 1 out of 1 billion fucking people are going to hit that get rich easy scheme bullshit where they invent something and they didn't have to work hard to get there. The rest of the people, they invent something amazing and they work really fucking hard to get something. And then there's most of us that don't actually invent something amazing, but just work really fucking hard and still do really fucking well. And then you've got the people who don't invent anything, don't work very hard, and guess what? Well, don't even have to tell you. So today what we're talking about is the importance of getting your mind right for facing the challenges that are about to come. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you what to do. I'm going to share with you the 3 biggest inspirational podcasts that I listen to on a weekly basis that help me get my mind right so that I can move forward when shit goes wrong. Being a business owner sucks, and it's also great. It's hard, and some days it's like, how the fuck did I get so lucky to pick this? Some days you can't even get out of bed to face the challenges that you have coming up in the morning, and some weeks fly by, and you're just like, wow, I'm really happy I chose to be an entrepreneur, businessman, real estate agent. But let's talk about when things aren't so nice, because that's a lot of the time. And most of the time things are going well, But if you just sit back and do what you've always done, you're going to get the same results that you've always got. So you have to be learning, you have to be moving forward, and you have to be preparing not only for the bad times, but during the good times, you better be preparing for the bad times and getting better at your craft and better at your art, because you're about to go into the bad times. So when I first started real estate, I looked for the inspiration that would keep me doing the activities that I hated doing, but I knew that I had to do in order to become successful in real estate. Now what I look for is I look for the mindset of what it takes to persevere and keep going with those activities that I still hate to do, but know that I have to do it, and just hate them a little bit less. There's 3 podcasts that I listen to that are 100% have changed my actions. The reason why I say that is because there's 3 different levels as to which you can take information. The first level is you hear the information, you forget about the information. Kind of like you read a book, you get to the end, you kind of forgot a lot about what you read. Number 2, you get the information, you read the information, you hear it, you listen to the information, you remember the information, and you recall it, and sometimes you apply it when necessary or applicable. And then there's number 3. And number 3 is the most powerful, and that is you get the information and it changes your daily actions that become habits and processes and systems, and it changes the trajectory of your life. So let's talk about these 3 podcasts that I listen to that have absolutely, in one way or another, changed the trajectory of my mind, my business, and my life. Podcast number 1, MF CEO Project. It's called the motherfucking CEO Project, as in CEO, business owner, CEO of the company project. And it's called that because the purpose of the podcast is to convey the idea that everybody in their own way is a CEO, if not of a company, but of their life. You are in charge. It is 100% your responsibility for the outcome which you get. And even if something happens to you, it is still your fault, and there is still something you can do about it. Now, this is a real business, self-development, entrepreneurial podcast, but it's spoken in a way that is very simple to understand. The host of the podcast, Andy Frisella, uses a lot of F-bombs, so if you're sensitive, this isn't the podcast for you to listen to. However, the gold nuggets that you will pull out of a podcast listening like this, it's spoken in a way that's like this, will help you with your mindset. It will help you stop being a victim. It's going to give you tips and tricks on leadership. And I'll be the first to say there are no fucking shortcuts, but this is going to be a great podcast for you to listen to understand that people put years and years and years into their business and into their podcast and may never get paid until finally something will break. And it could be 10 years, as was the case for Andy Frisella. If you want to find out more about him, it's called the MFCEO Project. Host is Andy Frisella, an amazing businessman, an amazing leader. And you'll want to check out also his business, which is Supplement Superstores. It's called S2 for SSS2, Supplement Superstores. Get it? Okay. Supplement Superstores, and they are a $100 million a year business. The guy owns several businesses. Next podcast, Face to Face. Face to Face, I'm going to say if you are in the industry of real estate or lending or some sort of business owner, this is a great podcast for you to listen to because it focuses on execution. This podcast is the podcast that will teach you the activities that you need to know how to do, the tracking of numbers so that you can see what kind of return you're getting for your money on your investment, the execution, leadership principles, how to hire, how to fire people, what it's like to be in the real estate grind from day to day. Now, these guys are huge on mindset. They are going to twist the way that you have previously thought about many of the ideas you've been taught about real estate. It's going to help you see them in a different way. And these guys are highly successful, high producers in the real estate industry, closing over 500 transactions a year for several years in a row. Take a look at this podcast, and let's get on to my favorite podcast. Podcast is the Jocko Podcast. And this podcast is from, the host is former Navy SEAL Jocko Willink. It's a podcast most typically of him doing a book review, where most of the topics are centered around war, lessons learned from war, leadership principles. He picks a book, and some of the shows have the most terrifying, the most unbelievable stories of human perseverance and resistance that I didn't even know shit like this was possible, except it happened to thousands of people over the course of months, weeks, and years, that people were able to endure the type of physical and mental abuse possible and came out on the other side alive and still kicking ass. So the podcasts that I recommend you listen to are episodes 139, The Bataan Death March, episode number 31, 4 Hours in My Lai, episode number 51, Human Suffering in Korea, and episode number 12. Episode number 12 is my favorite podcast of all time. The amount of quit being a little bitch I got out of that podcast when I discovered what other people have endured for this country is unfucking believable. Now, the podcast always has lessons in it of leadership, which Jocko Willink, the host of the podcast, is very well adept because he led men through combat, having some of his people killed and dealing with the repercussions of what happens to people after they've been through heavy combat. The skills that you will learn from Jocko Willink are absolutely applicable to business. In fact, he has started his own company called Echelon Front. That is a company that is a coaching and training company for how to be a better leader at all levels. Even if you're not a leader, how to become and be a leader within your organization at all levels. Absolutely amazing podcast. This is the type of shit that I listen to. And the reason why I bring up these three podcasts is because in all three of these, there is absolutely no sugarcoating. There is no bullshit. These people get right to the point. It's not hokey. In fact, it may be too hardcore for a lot of the listeners. I'm going to take it this far, especially with the Jocko podcast. Some of those episodes, especially the ones that I mentioned here, are so hardcore and they're so unbelievable, the topics that are discussed, that I actually cannot listen to it while I'm working out at the gym, because I like to be focused and get my workout done and listen to a little something, and these podcasts are so heavy. These podcasts get so deep into how terrible human nature can be and how to overcome some of the most terrifying and horrific events that have ever occurred on this earth, that I can't actually work out while listening to it. I find myself sitting on a bench at the gym, totally consumed by the podcast. So it's more of a podcast that I listen to on a quiet afternoon when I have a few hours to get out a notepad and jot down the ideas and the notes and all the thoughts that come through that I can apply to my life. And I'm just going to say it because at the end of the day, all three of these podcasts teach me that I am capable of so much more than what I'm currently doing, and to quit fucking complaining. So when things get hard and things get tough and money starts to run dry, your best employee quits, you haven't spent time with your family, just go back to one of these podcast episodes that I've recommended from Jocko Podcast and realize you have absolutely nothing to fucking complain about. You are not a victim. You are in control. And if you got yourself into this mess, you can get yourself out and build an empire. Everyone, thank you for tuning in to this week's podcast. Please leave comments, subscribe, give us feedback. Let us know what we can do to get better at this podcast. If you have any questions, you can always hit us up on Instagram, Facebook, whatever application you like to use or don't use, or you can just leave us a review and we'll make sure to either respond or take anything you guys have to say into consideration. Now, as we always say on this podcast, thank you for listening. And get your ass back to work.
I'm an orphan. My brother's queer. The city of Chicago got the clap from my sister. Mom drinks. Dad coughs blood. I have ringworm, immersion foot, the incurable crud, and the giraffe ruined my chances of being a brain surgeon. People, you have no problem. Except me.